And so on to our final session for the day, and we've got a fantastic panel. I'm so excited to have the speakers that I've got today. I think it would be a great way to end. We've talked a lot about all the specialisms. We've talked about some really, really tough topics. But really, we want to end on what the future looks like for you as an individual, as an event marketeer. What are the options? What are our teams going to look like? What are we going to need to deliver? And for that, I have a really experienced panel. With me here in the studio, I've got Sam Chance, who is Marketing Director from Montgomery Events. And virtually, continuing our hybrid format, we've got Kate Disley from TEMBO Creates. And Rob Nathan from Media 10. So 3 incredibly experienced event marketeers. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm kind of, where am I looking? You guys, how's 2020 been? I'm going to start with you, Sam.
Who's going to go first? Shall I go first? First of all, this studio, always wondered what it would like to be on the news. And, this time I've got that feeling now. It's great. Yeah. We all know it's been a real tough 5 or 6 months, and with all of us, our teams, have been reduced. But there's also been a lot of exciting things that have happened, which I'm sure we'll bring up in this discussion.
In your business, how are the marketing teams currently structured? Do you work in a silo, or do you work together? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's changed. It's changed quite drastically again just in the last few months, just with losing team members and where we were this time last year. But previously we worked in portfolios, so I look after 3 portfolios, and within each of those portfolios they would have had a marketing manager and an exec, and then an assistant that worked within those. And due to shortage of teams and what work needs to be done, we've had to reduce that. And actually, we work across all shows now, and it really is just building on the philosophy that we try and keep everyone as busy as the other one. So where work is needed to be completed, that we go ahead and make sure that's done.
So it's more of a pitching in.
It's a pitching in, yeah. It's doing what's needed and making sure that at the end we're delivering on the objectives that we know we need to deliver.
Sure.
And I'd say for this last 6 months is marketing has become really strong element, almost the most vital part of the business at the moment, where unfortunately, the sales haven't been coming in because we're not sure whether exhibitions have been able to take place. But we have been the ones that have still been able to engage with the communities, are still able to make sure that we're providing for their needs, which an exhibition normally would have been the platform to do, but we have to having to find other elements of how to do that.
And I'm going to try and go to our virtual guys now. Rob, Sam, you mentioned there about sales related marketing relationships. Rob, how are you finding sales and marketing at the moment? How has this changed the relationship since March? And to what extent can marketing drive the commercial opportunities?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear, yes.
I'm live. I think that the relationship naturally has got closer, and that's probably fairly obvious to say. And I think that people tuning in today would extol the virtues that leadership and the bright ideas come from the marketing department. I'd be shot down by the commercial teams or by the operational teams, but it's often, I think that marketing has been in the shadows for too long within organisations, that we've often felt that we weren't, our voices weren't being heard. You often saw people from commercial teams elevated quickly into senior management, maybe C-suite positions. Now, teams working together, it gives the opportunity for the marketeers to have that mouthpiece and to be the ones who are coming up with the thought leadership and getting the recognition that they rightly deserve, but only if they're willing to adapt to the new norm, which is really cliched. But marketeers have to realise that things aren't the same. We're not just marketing events anymore. We're marketing brands, and they've got to adapt and come up with new ideas. And it's often the genius within our departments from the marketing team that are coming up with those kernels of ideas and can then lead from the front and almost take the rest of the company with them.
Yeah, just to jump in on that too is, I think previously is the sales team would always just be speaking to exhibitors. And so they would be speaking to the sales side. So they'd be trying to understand the needs of the exhibitor, and whether that be I want brand recognition, or I want to deliver more leads. But what I suppose wasn't really questioned so much was that exhibited even what our visitors to the show wanted to see. And I think it's trying to gain a much thorough understanding which marketing are able to deliver through our insight from either previous registration, from surveys that we do, even just the amount that we read up on industry news. We understand what our communities are most interested in finding, and we can help now craft even what an actual live exhibition could be, but also, if we go into the virtual entity or anything else that we do, just making sure that we know what their needs are, and then we go ahead and then provide what we can to meet those needs.
Brilliant. And Kate, can you hear me, Kate?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on. And you obviously with TEMBO, you're across many. You work across many organisers, and you have extensive experience in many. You've got such a broad view on what's happening in across the marketing function. Are you seeing the same across other businesses as well?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk from my own experience as a business owner as well. I mean, it is, we're fighting for our survival. It's all hands on deck, and everybody in the company now has to be a salesperson. You have to be revenue generating, and everybody's got to play their part. So that's just my business, but as, a wider industry point of view, everybody is being looked at, and that's a horrible situation that we're in, and it's nobody's fault. But sadly, everyone will be being reviewed, and the people that can bring to the table, some of the key qualities that we have as event marketers, and we do have these qualities if we're good at what we do. So, resilience, adaptability, and innovation as well. So if you have those qualities, now's the time to kind of bring those to the table and help both your organisation and think of your marketing in terms of brand, not event anymore. It has to be about the brand and all the different ways you can generate revenue for that brand. So I think, I was just going to add, also time if you're sitting at home as well and you no longer have a job, sadly, because we know so many people are in that situation. It's time to obviously start thinking about your own personal brand as well, and marketing yourself, getting yourself out there.
And COVID, I think you touched on this, and COVID is giving marketing the opportunity, a real opportunity here to drop the legacy. So many people do things year in, year out, just because they've always done it and they've been fearful to drop anything. Obviously, budgets and resource have meant that we're actually going to have to streamline our marketing campaigns, which I think is a really great opportunity. But what do you think are going to be the biggest barriers and challenges facing marketers in I'm going to call them the next normal for as we get back to the live events? Kate?
So I think we're all just going to have to be really, really thrifty. So it's going to be about repurposing channels, tools and content that we already have, and seeing what we can do, seeing what we can work with there. Nobody's got any money to make any big investments, and I'm sure as event organisers, as content creators, we have a huge back catalogue sitting around probably that just needs looking at again and repurposing. And I think if you're thrifty and innovative and you can build out a nice content plan for the next, well, let's say, we're talking about 6 months, aren't we? So 6 months to 12 months, how can I use what I've already got, or how can I use what's already at my disposal? What relationships can I call on to help build out my campaign at this moment in time?
And Rob, we were talking about this a bit before about the approach for marketeers and needing to adapt their working practices. We've thrown around words such as bold, marketeers being bold, but what does that mean? What are you looking to your marketing team? What's the mindset of your marketing team moving forward into 2021?
That things won't be the same. Put simply, that things will return to normal one day, but that new normal will mean that those practices that has been prevalent over the last few years won't be the same. People are communicating in different ways. So we're now communicating on Teams or on Zoom all the time. The way that people should now be conversant with crisis management and critical comms that they never were before because of this. The way that they talk to their audience has changed, and this has given an opportunity for marketeers to hone those skills in their approach to their audiences. And also, when events do come back, they may not be the same initially, but all the lessons that they've learned over the past year, say it is a year that we haven't run events for, it means that you can't just go back saying, all right, I'm going to pick up my manual and go through from A to Z in what I did previously, because times have changed. People will make decisions in different ways now. People will make decisions much closer to an event, be it B2B or B2C, and you have to bear that in mind. And all those other skills that people should be honing now. When we talk about being bold, so what are you doing now? How are you engaging with your audience? And it's not just a matter of sending out a newsletter. It's not just a matter of doing a webinar. It's thinking, how can I create content? How can I monetize what my brand can offer, and how can I keep relevant when I haven't got a show to market? So those skills that marketeers have picked up over the last 6 months, which will be for the next 6 months, they need to adapt those skills and add them to the marketing mix, because the paint by numbers marketeers who just do the bog standard A to Z of marketing, that's not good enough anymore. You know, we need to have marketeers that are challenging the senior directors in a company and coming up with ideas that makes them sit up and not just waiting for the restart, because there is, you know, a wave of redundancies in our industry, and the ones that will be saved and the ones that will flourish are the ones that come up with positive, brilliant ideas and not just saying, I'm just waiting for a restart. So they have to harness everything they're doing now, keep coming up with ideas. There's no such thing as a bad idea, because out of those 10 ideas, one will be a genius idea. So just keep challenging it. The ones that don't want to do it aren't worthy of being in your organisation.
And is that, Sam, are you seeing the same at Montgomery?
Yeah, echoing exactly the same thing. I think one of the biggest things is opinions. Like, I want people in the team to give their opinions. I very much like coming up with lots of ideas, and I'm sure lots of them are rubbish. And if I don't have a team that are backing me up and saying that actually that's not the best idea, let's not do that, like we'd be constantly doing things that were not correct. So the more minds working together that can come up with something that we all agree on and we all buy into is what's then going to take us to the next level. So yeah, the more opinions, the better from my side.
And Kate, you mentioned, and sadly, that there are going to be a wave of redundancies. What advice would you give for anybody who has sadly been made redundant but is looking for a role and is looking at the moment to use their time wisely? How, obviously, joining us today is one of those first steps. But moving on, what would you say is the new skills? What should they be upskilling in at the moment?
Well, first of all, I think mindset-wise, I'd just like to say, obviously, for anybody that's lost their job, I'm honestly, my heart goes out to you, and I'm not sitting here from a position of sympathy. I'm empathising. I think all of us here have been fearful for our livelihoods in the last 6 months and wondered if we were enough. And I suspect that we will feel that again in the next 6 months. So if you're sat there, I know it's really hard, kind of trying to look forward. I think, practically speaking, like how do I give you some practical advice on that? It's a lot of the small business owners will be looking for, they might have lost all of their marketing team. So they will be looking for somebody that can come in and can run the whole thing. A bit like everything that both Rob and Sam have said, being fully rounded marketers that can do a bit of everything and can drive forward. I think if you can get to know your way around most of the platforms that are being used, most platforms, they have free webinars. So if you go onto Google Analytics, go onto HubSpot, do their free training, then at least, you can say to a prospective employer that yes, I haven't used it before, but I know my way around, and I can combine my experience of other CMSs with the training that I've done, and I'll be able to help you out. So just building out the training section of your CV, and just going in with an air of confidence. I mean, there's no silver bullet at this moment in time. There aren't a lot of jobs out there, and all I can say is I really hope for all of us it comes back soon.
Yeah, if I could just add to what Kate said, it's absolutely that. It's skill yourself up with those tools that are available, but also give yourself some marginal gains. Make yourself recognised on platforms. Go onto LinkedIn, comment, share posts, write, go onto Twitter. Make yourself a name that people that crops up with opinionated views, intelligent and opinionated views that people might think, oh right, so and so, I've seen them, and then otherwise you're just in the shadows. So use the time, and this is not just for those who are sadly have lost their roles, but it's for those who are currently in roles. Is that you'll be amazed how quickly you can grow your network, which is then beneficial to your own job at the moment and your own community. It's often the case that the same people keep cropping up on LinkedIn with comments, and you think some people might think, oh, we should pipe down a bit, but those people are the ones who are more prevalent and the ones who are gaining followers and their voices being heard, and so it goes hand in hand with what Kate says. Use the skills that are out there. Use the tutorials and the webinars and the videos and the tips and the free trials that are available. But also just be a bit more proactive in your methods. If you're a marketeer and you're shy about speaking up or commenting, then is this really the career for you?
Yeah, just on that note too, the being proactive at home is just, I would say, think how busy you were in your role and the amount of things that you would have liked to do during a campaign but never had the time to really spend time to focus on and understand. I'll give an example. Like, we're looking into our email automation and things like that. If I interviewed someone in 5 months' time and they came to me and said, look, I know the A to Z of automation, and actually I've looked at your events and what you do, and I could come in and do A, B, C, I'd be like, whoa, okay, brilliant. And that compared to someone who's said that they haven't, maybe done anything over the last few months apart from searching, that person's going to win. So it's just been, I suppose, intelligent and thinking, what would someone want to see from me of what I've been able to achieve in the last 3 months, even though it's been horribly tough. What can I show that's going to differentiate myself to the next person?
Definitely. And it doesn't have to be always digital. If somebody had said to you, I've been on furlough, but I've been doing this writing course and I can now produce, 400 or 500 word blog content, why don't I do one every 2 weeks for our website? I think you'd bite the hand off that person, wouldn't you, really?
Yeah, I work in food and drink. If someone came and said to me they've done a wine course, I'd be like, oh, brilliant. That's just as good. It's just people where you see their personalities, that they're eager to learn, and that we constantly have to keep learning. And if if you're eager and I can see that, then you're going to learn stuff while you're with us too. So
yeah, definitely. And I've got a question actually here from Nolan, who's asked, what has the biggest benefit for marketing teams since the pandemic started? What's been the biggest benefit for your marketing teams since the pandemic started? Similarly, what would you have done differently back in March? Oh, I think let's start with a positive. What's the what's the positive? What have you experienced?
The biggest positive for us, there's I suppose there's two sides to it. There's our own personal, like what we've learned, but then also what our communities have gained through us, and what we developed as soon as we went into lockdown. I work in food, drink and hospitality, and within that they were one of the most heaviest hit sectors, similar to our events sector. And what we found is there was so many people out there that were trying to offer other people a hand. They didn't have the platform to get that knowledge or understanding out to the masses. And we are really a data company. One of our biggest assets is our data. And if we were able to help and drive businesses forward that may have gone under. So that was our first. That was a big push from us that we did through webinars, through weekly newsletters that were just talking about anything that could help the communities. And then for our own self, the virtual side of it, we delivered over 40 webinars, brought in 10,000 new contacts. And even if you looked at on on an annual basis when we're running up to an event and we'd want to build data, and we'd go out, we'd work with an agency and spend 10 grand on 10,000 new contacts. We've done that for our webinars. Not only is it new data, it's also engaged data, so they now know our brand, so we're not going in cold. And those sort of influences have been really, really positive for us as a business, and giving us the confidence in a way to now understand how these tools work and be able to use those as the touch points throughout the year, when, as many of us have been trying to do for years and years, is how can we keep our communities engaged when our events aren't happening, especially when they happen on an annual basis. And I think we now have the tools to be able to do that, and that's really encouraging.
Kate, I can see you nodding there. Have you had seen a similar thing or experienced a similar thing?
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we just can't be one-trick ponies anymore, and we have to spend the year talking to our communities. It used to be like the 365 model was, a nice to have. If we've got some time and we've got some resource, then we'll put some focus into it. But it just can't be like that anymore. As Sam said, data is our asset, which is our community. We need to keep that data engaged and know that we're still here and that we're providing some sort of service to them. So that would be my one learning. I think it's not necessarily a learning, but it's certainly moved it up the agenda to the very top.
And what are your thoughts on virtual and hybrid events moving forward across B2B and B2C events? What are you guys all running them? And if so, what do you see the future being? Rob, for you?
We're doing some, like most people. We've had to adapt very quickly. I think going back to that previous question from Nolan, that one thing we did learn, and this is relevant, is the loyalty of our communities. That when we sadly had to postpone events, we could sense that there was a real feeling within that community, within that audience, be it B2B or B2C, that people were desperate for those events to happen. And that was just a recognition that you might not get, apart from putting the event on, but people were really upset. And the way they engaged with virtual, so moving on to that, the way they engaged with virtual events was really encouraging, and we built data from it. The future, a lot is spoken today about virtual events and platforms. I've been fairly outspoken on this, in that there is no substitute and there is ways to supplement virtual, but we're very strong in B2C. And I think that Tim spoke previously. It's one of those things that you're asking someone to engage their concentration constantly for an hour, 2 hour. People don't act like that. When people are going to events, they're walking around, and a lot's been spoken about serendipity. And you go in, you see a stand that you might not have thought was there, and you engage with that exhibitor, and you come away feeling good. That's very difficult on virtual. How do you replicate that serendipity? It's almost impossible. And for me, it's technology. This has come about in a heartbeat, change from events to not having events. And this is one of the best I've seen. I'm not just saying that, Katie, that this is fantastic to have a studio, because if the four of us would have just been on Zoom, it wouldn't have had that edge. So I think that we do need to go, if we are doing events, we need to be having multi-cameras, we need to be having engagement and interaction. Otherwise, I think that people will get tired very quickly of just looking at Zoom screens. And I don't think that's sustainable in the long run.
I noticed that none of you answered Nolan's other question, which is a difficult one, I think, which is, if you knew what you knew now, similarly, what would you have done differently back in March, knowing what you know now? What would you have done differently back in March? I think I would have drunk more, personally.
Well, we definitely wouldn't have prepared for all our events that were happening in October and September just gone. So I think that's what's been tough, isn't it? We've been in this element where we were preparing for. I went off on when we went into lockdown. I thought it'd be 1 month we'd be back in the office, and our events we had an event, I think that was, it was taking place in March that got postponed, and we postponed it to June. That's how much we thought it was only going to be a month. And so we had to do 2 crisis management sessions from that. So I don't know, we're not really in that point where I would say, is there anything that I would have done hugely differently? I think we've done an amazing job of how we've changed so quickly and given what we needed to for our communities. But yeah, no, I've got this. I don't think there's anything that I would have changed apart from, we just have to keep adapting and then seeing what's next. And we just don't know, do we? It's just so up in the air.
And what about you guys? What would you, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently in March? Send that to Kate first.
Honestly, it sounds really arrogant, but I don't think there was much that we could have done differently. I think I've said to some friends that, getting through the first 6 months was like being asked to run a marathon, and then you get to the end and somebody tells you, no, you've got to get all the way back again. And it is about, okay, right, so picking yourself up again, dusting yourself off, going through the same routine. What can I do? What's going to, change the circumstances for me now? And, what else have I got left in my toolkit to get us through this? But yeah, I mean, let's be realistic. It's pants. And no one could have foreseen it. I mean, I don't believe anyone could have foreseen it. So here we are. And it's now we've got to just do the best that we can.
And Rob, with you and your team?
I would have bought shares in Deliveroo, probably. And I would probably say that there's 2 things, really. One, as Sam said, we were thinking this was going to be over very quickly, and therefore there was a lot of panic. We wouldn't say that we were panicking, but it was that scramble to move events 3 or 4 months down the line. So probably knowing what we know now would have maybe taken things a bit calmer and looked at things more rationally. It's easy to say with hindsight. And the other takeaway is that what we're trying to do now is predict what will happen in the spring and late spring of 2021. And none of us can do that. I've seen a lot of research that's come out that said, if you asked someone now, would they go to an event? And it would be 60% said they wouldn't go, because that's now. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have, it took me 3 days to open the post and disinfecting the wheelie bin and things. Time is an element that none of us can predict. And we don't know that now we're about to go into this phase of tiered lockdowns and restrictions. And there's a lot of resentment towards it. Whereas in March, it was almost a bit of a novelty when we all went home and worked from home. People's perceptions change. In another 6 months' time, people's perceptions will be different again. And we can't foresee that, but we have to think they won't be the same as they were. Today is a really low day because we're going into more restrictions. The curve is going in the wrong direction. But we have to look at the horizon and we have to think, this will come back, and how can we adapt for when it does come back? And how will people's mindsets be come next March and April when it's getting lighter, when the clocks change, and when we can be out till 8 o'clock and it's spring again? People will be in a very different mindset to dealing with COVID, which will still be around. And I think that's what we have to have in our mindset, is that don't just act in the here and now. Don't panic that today is desperate and therefore that means that 6 months' time it will be desperate. Let's try and remain an air of positivity and an air of calm. And that's what I think that the strategy that companies should take.
Fantastic. I think we've got to wrap up now, sadly, but what's your sort of one, if you had to give one piece of advice to marketers who are going into 2021, what would it be? I'm going to start with you, Kate.
Just the thing that I said before, really, as an event marketer, you will be resilient, adaptable and innovative, and those are the things that you really need to rely on now. All of those qualities that you have, they're there inside you. You're enough. You can do this. kind of everyone is rooting for each other at the moment. So, as Rob said, can't deny, let's stay positive and, try and make our own luck a bit.
And for you, Rob, what would be your one piece of advice?
Yeah, don't be afraid to try new things, but reach out to people. Even if they're CEOs of other companies or your own company, you might have been nervous about speaking to them. It's a very different world out there now. People are more receptive to any ideas. So, as the sort of mantra has been on this session, be bold.
And what about you, Sam?
And for me, just to, use this time to really understand your audiences, understand what their needs are, what they are doing now instead of that events can't take place, where are they going to find their information or source the products as it would be in my industry, and really then turn that and look at how you can create something that engages that audience in a face-to-face way, be it digitally or, when events open back up.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all for your time today. I know you're all very time poor, so really, really, really appreciate it. And I know that all the marketers that have joined us and who'll be watching afterwards appreciate all your insights. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
And thank you very much to everybody today. It's been an amazing day. We are now wrapping up. I'd like to thank our sponsors again, Tag Digital, the Business Design Centre and First Sight Media. We've been really privileged to have you here and to have so many people interacting. And thank you to all the speakers who have taken up their time to be either in our studio, thank you, or beam in or stream in virtually. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully in a live event.
Hi, I'm Laura, one of the founders at Tag Digital. Tag Digital is a PPC agency for event organisers. Our remit is to deliver visitor registrations, exhibitor leads, delegates, awards and new data for event organisers. We work in campaigns all over the world for organisers like Informa, Messe Frankfurt, Dubai World Trade Centre, Essential, ITE and lots more.